Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Dries, reporter for the Daily Memphian, and this is On the Record, a special edition of our podcast back just ahead of Election Day, Thursday, August 4th, with an overview of some things to look for in the vote totals as you take in our coverage here at the Daily Memphian. We will be covering this with rolling vote totals at dailymemphian.com on the races for county mayor and district attorney, as well as the city referendum on extending term limits. We'll go into more detail on those and the many other races on the ballot and do more analysis in real time, all on Twitter at BDriesDM, which has become an election night tradition. Our coverage, which has been free, no paywall since early voting opened on July 15th, will on election night be about the contested races. So if you're an unopposed candidate and want to know what vote totals you're pulling, the fall off and all of that, there will be plenty of time for that once the unofficial total is in at the end of the night. We will move with the races that are turning into contest and let you know when races are decided. Here are a few things to look for in the totals as we report them and after they are all in and awaiting certification. These are the things beyond the obvious attention that the big three races will be getting. First, the Democratic primary for Tennessee governor that features Memphis City Council member J.B. Smiley, Jr. If Smiley wins, it will mark the second time in as many years that a Memphis Democrat has upset a Nashville frontrunner for the party's nomination to statewide office. The last time was in 2020 when Memphis environmental activist Marquita Bradshaw upset James Mackler in that year's U.S. Senate Democratic primary. Now, Democrats have not won a statewide race for governor or U.S. Senate since 2006 when Phil Bredesen was running for a second term as governor. This is more about what is going on with Democrats statewide than it is about the general election to come. This is what it means for future statewide elections and the prevailing view from Nashville of how Democrats win statewide that is clearly at odds with what it takes to get a strong showing over here in Memphis from the largest blue or Democratic base in the state. If Smiley wins the primary, this is another indication that Nashville-centric contenders need to get serious about campaigning here and drop the Elvis and barbecue references that someone has obviously told them will be enough to thrill the base here to move political mountains. Or accept that winning statewide, not the primary, but the office, does not revolve around Nashville. For Bradshaw 2 years ago, this was a triumph of her network of organizers within the party and outside of it. Smiley has been building a statewide campaign that is more about campaigning in the general election if he can beat Dr. Jason Martin, the Nashville contender. Local Republicans have their own crossroads, and it centers on the party's strategy of getting as many of the May County primary races decided before the first vote was cast by getting those races narrowed down to a single unopposed contender. Local GOP Chair Kerry Vaughn did well in that regard. The only contested May primary for the Republicans was the District 4 County Commission showdown between incumbent Brandon Morrison and challenger Jordan Carpenter. But it wasn't without some concerns among some of the unopposed in those primaries about whether Republican voters might be lethargic in their approach to the August elections after many sat out the May primaries. The election night totals Thursday will complete telling a story that is coming into focus with the early voting turnout numbers already, specifically the difference between those early voters' choice of a Democratic or a Republican ballot for the state and federal primaries that are part of the overall August ballot. By the Shelby County Election Commission numbers, 22,155 more Democratic ballots were requested than Republican ballots. Democrats have posted numbers like that before, only to see something much less than a Democratic sweep. The Republicans' 2010 sweep of every race for countywide office that year came with a difference of 58 more Democratic primary voters. But 2010 was a time when Republicans prided themselves on a slate of nominees that the party openly described as able to get crossover votes from Democrats. No one on either side of the partisan divide uses the C word much anymore. Instead, it's about turning out their respective bases of voters and hoping the other side is less enthusiastic or more divided. Two other vote totals we will be watching because it's not just about the votes within a given race. So compare the vote totals between the two Democratic nominees at the top of the county ballot, incumbent Mayor Lee Harris and Democratic nominee for District Attorney Steve Mulroy, who have campaigned as a team, even sharing a campaign headquarters. In fact, Harris has consistently campaigned as the head of the Democratic effort, with lots of rhetorical links in his campaign messaging to the national party. That's just as he did in 2018. Also, take a look at how the vote totals compare for the top of the Republican county slate between City Council member Worth Morgan, who is challenging Harris in the mayor's race, and incumbent District Attorney General Amy Wyrick, the only Republican currently holding countywide office. While Democrats have not defined the mayor's race or the DA's race as one being a priority over the other, Republicans have said re-electing Wyrick is their top priority above all others, with the mayor's race a close second. And Morgan has said he doesn't have a problem with that. The vote totals between Morgan and Wyrick could tell the tale of this tip of the spear strategy. Meanwhile, Republicans have added Jeff Jacobs, the Republican nominee for Shelby County Clerk, to the top of their second run of the local party's official endorsement ballot. Jacobs is challenging Democratic incumbent clerk Wanda Halbert, whose office has been under fire for a backlog of thousands of new license plates and renewed car tags that Halbert now claims has been worked through. That's the overview of what to look for in Thursday's combined vote totals when the early absentee and election day votes are counted. This is a more concise version of a story at dailymemphian.com that this podcast is part of. A few items not mentioned here that are in the story, and a few points made here that are not in the story. The article is free, not behind a paywall, at dailymemphian.com. Election Day is Thursday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After 7 Thursday night, the best election coverage in town gets underway where you are reading this article and listening to this podcast. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.